Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everyone.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer insights and ideas for how emerging small and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can establish and grow their business.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean all aspects involved in establishing and growing brands across channels and platforms. On our show, we bring on guests that are brand founders, leaders, investors, as well as all kinds of suppliers to these emerging brands that are subject matter experts to share their unique insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please follow the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. Let's get to today's episode. Let me tell you a little bit about Agency Habitat. Agency Habitat is your one-stop shop for emerging brands. From packaging design to Shopify website development, from organic social content to connected TV spots, from brand activations to influencer programs, they offer everything your brand needs to succeed, all under one roof. Contact them at www.agencyhabitat.com. Today's show is sponsored by Retail and Response. You've heard it a million times on this podcast. It's not about getting your product on the retail shelf. It's about moving product off the shelf and hitting the retailer's sales velocity hurdles fast. Otherwise, they're going to begin the discontinuation process. Trust me. A slow sales start can be fatal to your brand. You need consumers coming in seeking your brand. You know, the one they heard about on radio or saw on TV. If you think radio or TV advertising is too expensive, you need to speak with our friends at Retail and Response. With over 30 years helping drive hundreds of millions of dollars of sales for their clients, Retail and Response can get your brand on radio and TV for pennies on the dollar. Check them out at retailandresponse.com. That's retailandresponse.com. Today's Road to Retail episode is powered by Market Performance Group, MPG, a leading omnichannel commerce agency delivering integrated commercial solutions that accelerate profitable growth. MPG's new growth initiative helps brands of any size win in every channel, whether launching DTC, scaling on Amazon, or entering brick and mortar. Its team, veterans from top retailers, CPGs, and digital platforms, connects brands with consumers across the full funnel, delivering right-size strategies, strategic go-to-market plans, advanced analytics, and deep retailer relationships for exceptional business results. Check them out at marketperformancegroup.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to another episode of The Road to Retail. Tracy Priest, how are you, my friend?
It's great to see you, Bruce. We're all in one place today in Dallas. Very exciting. Our first time broadcasting live, basically.
Yeah, so before we kick off, we really want to thank our good friends at Agency Habitat and Lowtown Studios for making these episodes possible today, coming from Dallas. So today, we're joined by William Hicks, who is the CEO and founder of Magic Mind, co-founder, I guess. I just promoted you, so we're gonna go with that. So, William, thank you so much for your time today and for coming on the show.
Yeah, pleasure to be here and honored to be your first live in-person guest. I do want to make one minor adjustment. The good people of Fort Worth would be devastated if this was in Dallas. So we got to be clear that we are in Fort Worth.
That's correct.
And the good people of Fort Worth will be glad to know that. As a Dallas person, I can attest to that.
Well, I'm not sure that the Fort Worth people would be that upset the way the Cowboys are playing, so they might like that.
Oh, because we don't want to go there today.
Okay. Well, anyway, before we get going too far, William, I think we're going to have a little celebratory kickoff to the episode.
Would love to cheers. I mean, before I do anything where I want to look and feel sharp, I'd like to take a Magic Mind. So cheers, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank
you
you
very much.
Do more, stress less.
Absolutely.
Tracy, I didn't think it's possible, but I feel smarter and sharper already.
You do, and you look smarter and sharper.
It has that effect.
William, let's kick this off with, give us, the audience, a little bit about your background and the various roles you played until you landed in the Magic Mind seat.
Sure thing. Yeah, so I grew up here in Texas, in Dallas. Went to school at Princeton, had a great experience there, but didn't learn any marketable skills, so to speak. It was a liberal arts education, which I very much enjoyed, but really wanted to get my hands dirty and understand something more quantitatively. Kind of gravitated towards investment banking and finance as my first career. So I worked at Barclays, which had bought Lehman Brothers several years before my arrival there. So I was in the old Lehman group doing coverage banking for a little over a year. But I turned 25. My dad's gift to me was Rogaine. My hair was falling out in droves. I was very stressed. I was learning a lot, but it was clear to me that that was not something I was passionate about. And I really just didn't see myself making an impact on the world. It wasn't the 100-hour weeks that really got to me. It was spending those 100 hours working, but not seeing it tangibly result in anything changing in the world, let alone my group, really. So I've always had a entrepreneurial bent. I'm the fifth of 6 kids, and I have 4 older brothers and a younger sister. And so, what do they say in the Victorian age? The first son gets the property, the second joins the priesthood, the third goes to the new world, or something like that. I was the 5th, so had to go into entrepreneurship and start companies, but was always gravitated toward in entrepreneurial opportunities in college, and was thrilled to be able to join Brahmi as a co-founder in the second hire, which is an Italian food company that makes healthier Italian food using the lupini bean. So I was employee number 2 there. I ended up running operations and then eventually retail sales on the East Coast. So I was there for 5 years, really cut my teeth and learned the industry. And that led me to Magic Mind.
Well, I can tell you this, without knowing your family, if your sister is last, we know who rules the roost.
Yeah, and she's awesome. And she's 6'1", so she always keeps me in check too.
Excellent. Well, that brings us up to Magic Mind. Tracy.
Absolutely. So, William, tell us a little bit about the backstory of Magic Mind. Our small emerging brand audience always loves to hear the backstory, and then what gap you and your co-founder saw in the market and how Magic Mind fills that gap.
Yeah, of course. I love telling the story. It's not actually my story. I do come into the picture at launch, but it's my co-founder James's story. And he has started several companies. His last company was a software business called Tilt in the payment space. He was actually in Y Combinator back in 2011 and was one of the successful companies that come out of his batch. Got a ton of funding from Sand Hill Road VCs like Andreessen Horowitz and others. Scaled very quickly, got to over 100 million users. Was one of those tech companies with a bunch of users, bunch of employees, but no revenue yet. So, burning up to, I think it was $2 million a month at one point. And he was stressed out of his mind in his late 20s, just trying to keep up. So he was drinking 7 cups of coffee a day. Some days, trying to keep up, thinking that was helping him, perform through all the meetings and context switching that he had to do as a startup founder. But it actually ended up compounding his stress and led to a heart condition called atrial fibrillation. So his heartbeat was 170 beats per minute for over a week before he finally went to the ER, and they shocked his heart back into rhythm and said, James, you really got an issue here, and it's caused by overindulgence in caffeine and stress, and they're kind of commingling in a negative way. And with your condition, you can really only have about half a cup of coffee a day. And he's like, how the heck am I going to get by on that? And they said, try green tea. It's got less caffeine and L-theanine, which will extend your body's absorption of that caffeine. And that was sort of the light bulb moment. The first time he had really thought hard about, there's other stuff besides caffeine. What else could I add to that minimal amount of caffeine to get the most out of my morning ritual? And that set him off on this journey researching nootropics, adaptogens, functional mushrooms, these ingredients that can give our brains and bodies more to perform throughout the day. That was 5 years of research, led to a book called Beyond Coffee. He sort of became the nootropics dude in his circles in Silicon Valley. His startup was bought by Airbnb, and he ended up as an executive there. He was the kind of mad scientist with pill bottles and powders all over his desk, people asking him what to take. And he had settled on a mixture of 12 ingredients after about 7 years of research that he would send out in this Google spreadsheet. And it was called James's Magic Potion. And it sort of took off within Silicon Valley in the Y Combinator and Airbnb communities, to the point where he'd open the dock up and you could see live, there's 25 people in there. And a group of friends actually loved it so much, but hated pre-mixing and making this stuff every morning, that they contracted a commercial kitchen in San Jose to pre-make bottles for them every week. They go pick them up on Monday, have their 5 bottles for the week, and do it again. The co-op grew to about 60 people before it got back to James, and he thought, oh my gosh, this is product market fit. This is sort of, never thought I could be a beverage founder, but I think a company needs to exist here. And so we didn't do any market research prior to starting the company. James really just solved a problem for himself and decided to build a brand and product around that solution. So upon sort of deciding to go for it, he built the brands, all the design foundations that are still in place today, commercialized the product, launched in March of 2020, which is around the time that I joined. James is also from Dallas, a family friend of mine, someone I kept up with over the years as he did some awesome entrepreneurial things. And we both happened to be in LA after COVID came. I moved towards the West Coast to be closer with my now wife, which is a good decision for many reasons. And then linked up with James and just started offering advice, and very quickly became apparent that he was onto something with this product and then I could be of value. So started as GM, became the president and now CEO. I'm the CEO for the last about 4 years. And together, James and I have grown the business quite successfully.
That's great. What a great story.
That is great. I mean, solving his own problem, and then all these people just believed, and you stumble into it.
So I think it's interesting that, almost nothing in our life is the same as it was 100, 200 years ago, except that morning ritual drink of coffee or tea. Tea's been around for thousands of years. Coffee's really been well commercialized and marketed for 300 to 400 years. Everything else in our lives has changed, but the same black soup we have in the mornings. We're not anti-coffee at Magic Mind. We just think that too much caffeine can be counterproductive, and that there's other great nutrients that you can give your brain and body to thrive.
Yeah, no question on that. So tell us about Magic Mind's view on mental performance and the brain as a muscle. When we had our kind of pre-call about you coming on the show, you mentioned that, which was super interesting, along with your 5 pillars. So tell the folks a little bit about that.
Yeah, I should probably start with what the product is. We do consider it a mental performance shot. So we see mental performance as an emerging category that is a subcategory of energy. So you can almost think of Magic Mind as a different version of 5-hour energy, but built for focus, creativity, and presence rather than buzzy energy and staying awake all night. And Magic Mind, so we think of it as a mental performance shot that delivers calm energy, a sharper mind, and less stress. And we feel like those are the components, the feelings that people want to have going through their day to be able to thrive, particularly in a knowledge or creative-based job where you have to context switch between 50 different emails, 10 different calls in a given day. You actually don't want to be amped up with too much caffeine. That causes increase of stress, increased proclivity to procrastinate, for example. You actually want to be sort of present, and dialed in rather than like geeked out. And so that's the feeling that we hope to give our customers with Magic Mind. And 12 clinically backed ingredients. We actually use this awesome nano encapsulation technology that delivers up to 5 times higher absorption for these ingredients. And that's a real differentiator in the market for us.
Very much.
And yeah, but the brand, our mission is really to elevate mental wealth globally. And mental wealth is this new concept that we like to talk about, where you do think about the brain as a muscle. You think about it like you think about your physical fitness or your financial wealth, something that you invest in on a daily basis, not just talking about mental health when it's followed by the word crisis when something has gone wrong. So to your point about the 5 pillars, Magic Mind is actually 5th and least important in the stack for building your mental wealth. And we're very aware of that. The first pillar is sleep. If you're not getting good sleep, there's not any amount of Magic Mind that can overcome 2 hours of sleep last night. So sleep is the most important pillar. Diet, exercise, stress management, which can be prayer, meditation, going on walks, breath work, a way to regulate yourself. And then the 5th one is exogenous compounds like the ones found in Magic Mind. And we think that if you invest across those 5 pillars with a daily practice, you will see improvement in your ability to react to stress and your ability to perform in high pressure scenarios, and just to feel better between your ears on a daily basis. And that's what we hope to deliver for our customers.
So you also mentioned something about your personal mental hacks. You want to share a couple of your own personal?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
That'd be great.
Yeah. We are big believers in creating space for deep work at Magic Mind. We try to avoid meetings. We're actually a vehemently anti-Slack or messaging company. I feel like those tools just are a constant ping, getting you out of flow state and in focus when you're actually trying to do something. Right. So I like to start, and we encourage everyone on our team to start our day. We call this eating the frog. So you take your biggest task of the day and you tackle it first before even looking at your inbox. And it's something I have to remind myself to do every day. Something, for some reason, there's a friction there, there's a resistance. You want to jump into that inbox and get that dopamine hit from clearing that thing out. But if you just keep that thing closed, focus on the biggest task of the day, get that done. If you do 5 of those a week, you're going to make tremendous progress, even if the rest of the day is a total wash.
Right.
So eating the frog, it comes from, I believe, is Walt Whitman, who said, if your job is to eat 2 frogs in a day, best to eat the biggest one first, or something to that effect. And so we have an eat the frog tracker at Magic Mind. That's probably number 1 for me.
That's good.
I love that. In any category, William, differentiation is so key. So tell our audience today about the differentiation for Magic Mind, and then how do you communicate that to your consumers?
Great question. And honestly, I think we are still improving on the communication side to this day. 5 years in, it's a constant cycle. And I think if you're not constantly thinking about product and how to improve that, and B, refining your messaging, I think you're sort of resting on your laurels. But it depends on how we define our competition. I like to think about it in the most broad and general terms. If someone is subscribed to Magic Mind and having it every day, what are they firing in their routine? What are we replacing or doing for them, or are we incremental? And I think typically for customers, it's sort of that second or third cup of coffee, or it's an energy drink. And we're not anti that first cup. We're not saying don't drink coffee, it's bad for you. I had a cup on the way over here, but I know that with my Magic Mind, it's going to extend that first cup to last all day and make me feel more present throughout the whole time without a crash. So to differentiate against kind of excess caffeine, we like to really talk about the state that you feel. And as a functional product, we have the benefit that when you try Magic Mind, you really should feel it. And it's, it's a subtle feeling of focus, a narrowing of the attention window, but it's there. And so we really like to talk about the feeling that you'll get, because it is so different from having that 200 milligram Starbucks Pike's Place roast or that big cold brew coffee.
Sure.
It's just a much more noticeable feeling. So there's that. And then we also compete against other kind of coffee alternatives, energy alternatives. And I think there we really need to do a better job of describing what differentiates us. And I think it does come down to the nano encapsulation technology that we use. That's pretty awesome stuff. This stuff used to taste pretty insane back 5 years ago when we launched, and it was a bunch of powder in a bottle. And now it really tastes good, and it actually is more effective as well, which I think is just such a benefit to the customer.
That's awesome. I love that.
So you said earlier that your co-founder, James, just kind of stumbled into the formula trying to help himself. But as you've come on board and the company's matured, have you guys been doing any sort of consumer research? And we're going to get to your expansion into brick and mortar retail in a moment, because at a certain point, you might want to check and make sure things are working.
Totally.
Or a retailer's going to say, William, what proof do you have? So what kind of research have you done, and how did you decide to use those tools?
I think feedback loops are critical throughout the entirety of your journey, and I don't think it stops. I think Coca-Cola today is still probably spending more on focus groups and consumer research than anyone. They've been around now for 130 years. But, initially it was James's sort of gut and what worked for him. But he was getting feedback all the time. He actually sent me a unlabeled bottle filled with just powder when I was living in New York before we launched Magic Mind. As I mentioned, we had kept in touch. And actually, I'll admit this for the first time on this show, but I drank it that day and I immediately threw up. The matcha was so astringent, and I'm sensitive to green tea. I actually threw up in a WeWork in Manhattan, but I felt amazing all day. I was like, man, if they can figure that out, this is a pretty interesting product. So he was getting feedback initially. We did a consumer safety research study with a company called Exponent before launch, but then we launched D2C first. And I think this is a pathway that many of your episodes talk about, but it's one that I believe in as well. Getting customer feedback as quickly as possible. And so if you're able to sell direct to consumer with your product, I highly recommend that for at least the first 6 months, ideally the first 12, so that you can have customer conversations. And to this day, I still have a Calendly link in our NPS survey emails that allows you to schedule a call with me on a block of time that I have, so I can actually go deep with customers and understand their full experience. And that never stops. So we've been getting that feedback from customers along the way. And my first full-time hire, which was probably too late, it was about 2 years into the business, was a full-time customer service lead. Because I really believed in that feedback loop, who was doing customer interviews. And just recently, we invested in a real sort of attitudes and usages survey for the first time after closing a round of funding. And that's been interesting. But honestly, I got far more out of 20 customer conversations that cost me nothing but time than I did out of a $40,000 attitudes and usages survey.
Well, it's amazing when you speak to people directly, it can be pretty unfiltered.
Yeah.
And that's what you want, right?
You do, because if you ask your friends or your mom, they're going to just blow smoke up your butt. But you want to actually tell customers at the beginning of the call, or friends, like, hey, the kindest thing you can do is give me the most direct and honest feedback, and I can take it. That's why I'm here. So please don't sugarcoat this. It's actually the most kind thing to be completely transparent with me.
Right. So launching a brand, a CPG brand, is not for the faint of heart, as you've learned. And so tell our audience about how you and your co-founder kind of approach this long and winding road of launching a CPG brand.
Well, I think it's a life lesson that, the journey is really all there is. James and I are both quite philosophical people. At the end of the day, there is no destination, no matter what you're doing. And so you better enjoy it along the way.
Right.
And we've really enjoyed it. And even in times that are stressful, you have to have a stoic mindset and worry about that which you can control. And if you're doing the right things on those dimensions, then try to have fun with the rest. I tell starting founders all the time that they should approach their business with a 90-day trailing average emotion, meaning that you can't let the ups and downs of weekly or even daily news get you ecstatic or in the dumps, because this industry has plenty of both. There's been probably a dozen days where within the same day I've thought this is $1 billion business, and then, oh my God, we're going out of business in the same day. But you can't ride that. If you do, you'll burn out, and you have to sort of have a somewhat muted emotional response to things and let 90 days dictate how you feel. If it's going well for 90 days, you should feel happy. You should celebrate it.
Sure.
If it's going poorly for 90 days, you should probably have a real fire under your ass.
You need that rolling,
yeah, exactly.
As you guys have more time under your belt, you need that kind of rolling 12-month trend. And if the trend is up, it's like, all right.
Yeah, the right thing. I think it's important to also pick your head up. And I think early in my career, I was guilty of, jumping into the day's problem and really the year's problem, and just it's akin to digging a trench. Your head down, digging. And, it might make sense to pick your head up and see where is this actually going? And is this the right direction to be going? And one of my favorite quotes, which is probably another one I'll butcher, but, about, I think it's Abe Lincoln talking about if he had 5 hours to chop down a tree, he'd spend the first 4 sharpening his axe. I think that really applies in entrepreneurship in this industry. And if you pick the wrong category, if you pick the wrong packaging, the wrong messaging on pack, it doesn't matter how hard you work at it, it's going to be a headwind for you the whole time. Yes. You better be really diligent up front and thoughtful. Take time to reevaluate your direction on a consistent basis.
Right.
So that's good. And you touched on a little bit of this, but let's go a little bit deeper. So as a brand with Magic Mind, you guys began in the DTC online environment. What value do you see in launching in that environment? And why do you feel that's kind of the right approach for many, not all, but many of these emerging brands to take?
Yeah. I think strategy is dictated by form factor in a lot of ways. So if you're an RTD beverage that's 16 ounces or 12 ounces, it's hard to ship D2C, but I think you should still try. Really, almost everyone else, it's because the feedback loop cycles are so much quicker, and the cash conversion cycle is much quicker. I think for those two reasons, it really is important to start there. No matter how thoughtful you are and how much research you put into your first packaging, you're going to change it. I know today the packaging we have is going to be changed, and it's probably our 16th version of the packaging, and it's just, you're not going to get it right. And so, order the minimum order quantity of packaging, sell it on D2C. Even if your margin is worse, you can show a path to a pro forma margin that's better with scaled orders. That's really what matters at the end of the day, is getting to that high gross margin area and seeing a clear pathway there if you're trying to raise money early on. So, I would take a hit on margin, order smaller packaging run sizes, start on D2C, and just get that customer feedback loop going, because you are going to change the product, and you are going to change the packaging, and you are going to change the messaging. And if you launch retail, it's really hard to get that feedback from customers.
And the other one, William, that other founders have told Tracy and me, I guess, is the fact launching D2C online, you also have the ability to tinker with your pricing, which is much harder, which we're going to get into in a moment. Once you're in the brick and mortar retailer, you make an error with your pricing, Jack, that's a you problem.
Definitely.
Me.
They get you if you raise it or lower it, they're going to charge you.
Exactly.
But that's good. Well, we're going to morph into the retail discussion now.
Absolutely. So as you entered into brick and mortar, tell our audience a little bit about how you chose, the right retail partner, and how that you were looking at how that matched, what Magic Mind was about.
If you don't mind, I'll start with timing too.
Yes.
So we, as I mentioned, I think form factor really dictates strategy. And initially, we, as a small beverage, were one of the only sort of D2C energy drinks. Mm-hmm. And that was the initial strategy for the first really 2 years. We always had an aspiration for being omnichannel, but really wanted to focus on D2C. So we were able to be more patient than maybe some other brands can be. Actually, by the time we launched Amazon and retail, it was about 3 years into the business.
Okay.
Now I'd recommend founders, launch Amazon within 6 to 12 months. I think it's just it's a great channel to play in and you need to be there. We were a little overly cautious there, I'll admit. But because we were having growth graphs that were up and to the right and we're continuing to iterate on formula, flavor is a big one for us. I wanted to be as good tasting as we could be before launching retail. I just knew that we had to win in mass and conventional retail to win, and that the product as it was initially formulated wouldn't do that. So we had a lot of wood to chop there. And then once we started to feel the pull from retailers, we actually had people reaching out to us. Central Market here in Texas was our first retail partner. Got connected to them with they actually DM'd me on LinkedIn. And had seen some of our social media activations. We had an influencer partnership with someone who works closely with Central Market as an influencer herself. And it led to them wanting to try Magic Mind. And they were willing to, this is before we were ready in terms of flavor, they were willing to not have us go through distribution. So typically, Central Market takes their product through KeHE. Right. We ship direct to store. And we're able to just get initial data without showing up in all these different retailer locations. We were very diligently focused on that data and sort of where it worked best in store. And that led to us kind of refining our strategy for where we wanted to live on the retail shelves and what sort of promotional strategy would work for us. They gave us the confidence to launch with Sprouts nationwide as our first partner, which is a similar situation. We felt that pull from them. We basically connected on LinkedIn again and reached out. The buyer was a fan of the product, a customer of the product online, and was willing to take a bet on us in Sprouts, and then focused very intentionally just on Sprouts and on Southern California for a year before expanding door count, which we've done in the last 9 months.
So I'm curious, where did Central Market and Sprouts want to put you? How did that conversation go?
So this is something I was wrong about, and I've been able to change my opinion on, but I thought that I did not want to be in the wellness shot set. I thought that people don't shop energy there. My experience at Brahmi, we went in the salty snack set at Whole Foods at launch, and Brahmi was a brand where I wish that we had to struggle to get distribution, because we went to our first Expo West and got 5 regions of Whole Foods, launched and learned so much about the product, the shelf life, the way that we wanted to make it. But we learned it in retail, which took so long to get through that product and change that packaging, and total miss not to launch D2C there. But in Sprouts, for example, I wanted to be in cold brew. And the dairy buyer was able to sort of wrap his head around it as a functional espresso shot, essentially. And so we launched into cold brew. But I have changed my mind on this. I do think we play well in the functional shot cooler. I think the shot cooler is actually changing. It was what was once a purely immunity-led set is now building out a bunch of different functions. And one wave we're riding is it's really sort of developing into what I think of as the bridge between vitamins and supplements and functional beverage is now that wellness shot cooler. So we're really building out that energy and mental performance functionality in that cooler for them. But at Central Market, we tested point of sale with shelf-stable product and realized that we needed to be in the perimeter in the cold case. That was a big decision we made. D2C product is preserved and is not natural. It's got potassium sorbate, same thing that's in a bunch of soda, like Coke, Diet Coke, all these things. Totally safe, but not natural. And it's shelf-stable, but our retail product does require refrigeration. It doesn't have that ingredient, and it's a cold supply chain all the way through. But we wanted to deliver that natural product experience to our customers in retail, and we wanted to live in the perimeter cold cases, which is now where we live. So wellness shot set in natural, and then in conventional mass. It's actually interesting. I think conventional mass are ahead of the curve here with vis-a-vis natural.
Which is unusual.
Yes. They have the shots merchandised alongside the produce beverages like juices, kombuchas, functional probiotic sodas in some cases. And so like a Target set or a Tom Thumb set here, I think is a little bit more advanced than having it in Whole Foods, for example, in the middle of the store in whole body. But we've learned all these lessons through the years and tried to test it in as many locations as we can.
A lot of categories, the actions on the perimeter.
Yes, absolutely.
William, as we prepped for your appearance on today's show, you mentioned Magic Mind's omnichannel flywheel. Can you tell us what this is and why it's important or been important to your brand's growth?
It's our core strategy. So every decision that we make as a business is filtered through the lens of, does this accelerate the omnichannel flywheel faster? And it's not a new concept. Magic Spoon, Overnight Oats, great brands have shown that if you can build a big direct response D2C business and a big retail business, they can feed off one another. And the more you're able to spend online, the faster your velocities are in store, the more you can expand distribution, the more revenue you have, the more you can spend online, and it sort of feeds itself. But what is new is we're the first to really do this in a beverage category, in a liquid form factor. There are a couple other shop brands I think highly of that are doing this as well. But because of the form factor, we're able to have this really thriving D2C business. And it really gets back to when we launched, positioning the product and building the product as a daily use item that our customers can habituate in their daily routines. And that enabled us to sell a subscription product. We now have 35,000 monthly active subscribers, subscribe to Magic Minds and drinking it every day. We have 91% of our customers drink Magic Mind 3 days a week or more, and 50% of our customers have it every day. So in the back of that habituation, we were able to build this high LTV subscription business that allowed us to go compete for customers in the expensive media markets of paid social and influencer marketing, et cetera. So the omnichannel flywheel is just that. It's our ability to have a standalone D2C channel that is profitable in its own right, that we've been able to scale, but that sort of as a free byproduct is spitting off 50 to 60 million brand impressions a month. We essentially get a free Super Bowl commercial every 8 weeks that drives brand awareness, leading to our category leading velocities as soon as we place this thing into retail. And so it's been feeding on itself, and it's led us to make real strategic decisions. We had a mental performance gummy product that we really loved internally, but we didn't view it as a retail item, and we sort of refused to spend behind it. Every marginal dollar should go into spinning the flywheel faster for those products that we have both merchandise on our website and on retailers' shelves.
Right.
I think you really need something like that to win today. It doesn't have to be this omnichannel approach, but I think unless you have an advantage in getting your word out, it's going to be a slow road. And I think it's still possible to build a great product, build a great brand, and just execute in retail and win, but it's going to take you 12 years. And that's fine. And I intend to be doing this for well over 12 years, but our growth slope is the way it is because we found an unlock to building awareness in a way that suits our strategy. And it doesn't have to be this. It can be being great at organic content or community like Midday Squares or brands like this, or you can have a thought leader as a founder who's in the industry out there on podcasting or building organic awareness for the brand. So I think you do need an advantage to win in today's very noisy marketing environment.
Differentiation.
Yeah,
absolutely. So you talked a little bit about this, but talk to our audience about what marketing vehicles do you guys use to build awareness and trial on Magic Mind?
Yeah, so it's big time D2C. I mean, in the retail channel, I'll sort of put a pin in retail for a moment, but the broad awareness is built through our D2C marketing, and it does feed retail. But to this day, I mean, we've broken 50 million in run rate. We've had, more importantly, our first 3 profitable months in a row this year. And we're still 95% of media spent into Meta ads. So Facebook and Instagram. We've tested other channels. We've tested TikTok. YouTube's showing some early promise right now. We have not tested linear, but yeah, I think you can go a long way with Meta. And until you're spending 25 a day, you should just probably spend every marginal hour optimizing what you're doing on Meta rather than exploring Snapchat or exploring Pinterest or whatever the sort of ad platform du jour is. We also do influencer marketing, and we do this pretty uniquely. We have a team that we do direct outreach to micro and small creators on YouTube and podcast channels, and it's basically a sales team. So we set it up offshore in Eastern Europe and have a group that at one point was doing 500 deals a month, average deal size about $300 to $500. We sort of tempered that strategy down and are now kind of supporting and sustaining our retail launches and activations and ad creative for Meta, but a really interesting channel that I think you can kind of win with some elbow grease if you're willing to put in that time. And then in retail, we really follow the philosophy of the closer you can spend the dollar to the register, the better. So TPRs drive the majority of our incrementality. We really believe in merchandising, and fortunately we're in a category with velocities that can sustain and support merchandising. Not everyone can do this, but we invest in merchandising at launch in all of our key accounts, and then we'll pulse it on and off depending on sort of promotional schedule. If we're adding new SKUs into a retailer, we really want to help them execute on shelf and invest in those accounts and not just be sitting behind our keyboards making investments. We need to be boots on the ground, really delivering that hard-charging retail mindset that you need to win. And that was fortunate to develop at Brahmi. I started my career on the sales side with a backpack full of product on the subway, trying to sell into national accounts in Manhattan, which
love it.
If you've ever done that, it's very hard. It takes a lot of elbow grease. But so we try to bring that philosophy to this omnichannel approach to.
Love that. That's great.
You measure the impact. How do you guys measure what's working? Some of it, people want to have immediate result and then they know to do more. And some people bail on things too fast. And we've had founders say, you know what? Every now and then you just got to hang in there for a little while. So we're kind of interested to hear what your perspective is on how you measure and evaluate where these precious incremental dollars should be laid.
It's a great question. And there's a temptation now to get addicted to seeing that dashboard change by the hour based on your investment in marketing. And I think with the attribution changes in the last 3 years, there is this kind of pendulum swinging back towards kind of doing the basics right on brand marketing and messaging really matters. Performance marketing is one layer of an overall marketing strategy, but we're trying to get better at this and do more kind of traditional marketing messaging, product marketing, and layering that into our performance creative. But in terms of measurement, we're looking hourly, daily at, we have like sort of two views of customer acquisition cost or CAC. We look at a simple view, which is just customers, ad spend over customers acquired. We also look at a blended view of all variable marketing spend, including kind of the cost of content, the cost of the influencer team and those deals. And we look at those, and then we look at tools like House Analytics, which we've just started using, which at our scale allows us to do holdout testing geographically and see what actually the lift really is mathematically. And it's really good at understanding that and what your incremental cost of acquisition is. But at the end of the day, you see it in your bottom line. And, channel by channel P&L and contribution margin target is still what sets the strategy for the business. And we start with contribution margin by channel and then work from there backwards into, okay, what does that mean for our cost of acquisition target? How quickly do we need to pay back that cost of acquisition based on our LTV and how it's been trending? But it all comes back to the P&L and sort of how we can unlock profitable growth, which is our North Star goal as a brand.
Well, it's also interesting when you say that you take all the ancillary costs into consideration as well, which is logical because it's all cash out, right? So if you have all these kind of non-working costs, it's still money out of the Magic Mind treasure chest. So
it is. And one lesson you're likely to learn is that, there is some of those costs are more fixed than variable. Content costs will always scale, but in the beginning, you're probably spending 15, 20% of ad spend on the cost to actually create that content. And, as you scale, that comes down closer to 5%, ideally less than that. And so you'll see, if you scale spend on the simple CAC of just looking at your ad spend divided by new customers acquired, that may look like it's going up, but then you're diffusing more fixed costs and you're actually improving as a business, and your very blended cost of acquisition is coming down, and that's actually helping for profitability. And so you have to be very cautious in what you measure. And I like to lump all the costs in and make decisions in that way.
I think that's smart. So given your unique background, part of this topic is going to reach into your Wayback Machine. So what counsel would you give an emerging brand considering taking on an investor? And what should they watch out for?
Yeah, I think you want to be in a position where you can choose your investor, and not everyone is.
Right.
So, I'm a big believer in 90% of sort of fundraising is how your business is doing outside of that fundraising period. And you really need to be focused on creating some sort of graph that's going up and to the right and be obsessive about that and doing all the right things to make that happen. Once you have that, I'm a big believer as well in not talking to investors just when you need money. In my first time fundraising, it was in 2022 and 2023 for the business. I talked to 76 firms before getting a term sheet, and it took me 6 months. But I was meeting all these people for the first time, and from then on, I decided I need to build these relationships and treat them as real relationships. And so, on a quarterly basis, keeping up with folks at these firms, to where we launched our Series A process earlier this spring. It was a very quick process. We got 7 term sheets. It went very well. The business has been doing very well, but I've also been building these relationships and rapport over time. And someone very wise once said, if you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money. And so you sort of take that approach of asking for advice, building the relationship. Once you then have an ability to choose amongst your investors, to your question, I really like to, it served us well to work with people with founder experience or managing operating experience. No knock on people who haven't. There's plenty of great investors who haven't been great operators, but I think in the early stage, it really does help. They've been through it. They've gone through those crazy roller coaster weeks and days, and know not to get too dejected when things aren't going well for 2 months. So long as you have the right strategy and are working on the right things, they'll understand that good things will come. And I also think with investors, you have to not be afraid of delivering bad news and telling the truth. I think everyone can handle bad news, but people can't handle our surprises.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, so true.
So
true.
One other point on this, William, to the founders that secure an investment, what should they expect now in terms of communication and reporting? Because we've heard all kinds of stories. It's like, I had no idea they'd call me this often. Or they expect me to do these fantastic reports like every month. So what should they expect once you...
Yeah, I think I would just communicate with your investors, particularly the lead investor, and make sure you're on the same page about that kind of going into it to start with. I don't think, some people want this, but I don't like when investors are calling me constantly and trying to sort of serve as a manager. It sort of strikes me as overly anxious and kind of controlling. So I prefer, a trusted work environment where I'm here to do my job. You're here to help and support and give advice and counsel. So I need to provide transparency and data for you to be informed to give that counsel. At the end of the day, you need to sort of let me do my job. And if I'm not doing a good job, I won't be here for very long. But like, let me show you the results and let me then come to you with the problems. But yeah, I'm a big believer in either you manage your board or your investors or they manage you. And so I recommend taking a proactive and assertive approach there. But that doesn't mean don't report. I think reporting is important. The scorecard is important. We did quarterly updates until recently. Now with the sort of more professionalized investor class that came in the Series A, we are doing monthly. But I now have a finance function to help me with that. In the past, we've been super lean. I was the only employee for over 18 months at Magic Mind. And we got to 12 million in runway with 3 people. And so when investors are asking you for weekly calls or monthly reporting packs, that's taking away valuable time that could be spent advancing the business, and you need to make sure they understand.
Your advice there is level set up front.
Level set up front, and
doesn't mean it'll always stay that way.
Yeah. Well, I'd say be assertive in the relationship, and demonstrate confidence and show good results, and results are what matter at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Everyone gets along as long as the numbers are coming in. Exactly.
So key. So as we're rounding third and heading home here, William, tell our audience who's had the most influence on your career and why.
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask this, and I have 2 answers, and I'll just give a brief shout out to my dad is the first that comes to mind.
Love that.
Yeah, he was an entrepreneurial guy himself, very successful, but also went through tons of highs and lows, and I think he went broke basically 3 times, but always sort of managed his way back on top, and is a very successful guy. So I take a lot of lessons from him and how to treat people and how to be ambitious and follow your gut instinct and your dreams. But for this question specifically, and sort of in this career, the last 10 years of my career in CPG, it's got to be my co-founder, James. Mm-hmm. He's been such an amazing mentor and resource for me. He serves as sort of the executive chairman of the board and is still I call him the right brain founder, or the Mac founder. I'm the left brain or PC guy. I do have 3 monitors. He does just have an iPad. He's sort of the creative brand. I'm the sort of business operator, but he has been an amazing guide in having already gone through the startup journey, a couple more times than I have. I'm fortunate to this be my 2nd rodeo, but this is probably his 4th. And he went through Y Combinator, had a lot of training there. Things like setting your core values before you hire any employees, which didn't even occur to me, has served us so well in building an amazing culture at Magic Mind and having a lot of success in recruiting and hiring the right people and the right talent.
So important.
That's just one example of the dozens and dozens of things I've learned from James, and give him a ton of credit for starting an amazing product and amazing brand. And I'm just super grateful to be working with him, and we work super well together.
It's always good when the partners are still writing good songs and haven't gone their own way.
Yeah, thankfully.
William, so last topic. Who is your favorite sports team, band, or brand, and why do you support them? Can't say Magic Mind.
Yeah, Magic Mind is up there, but actually I'd probably say regardless, it's the Grateful Dead.
I am glad we had him on this show. Please continue.
Bruce is in heaven.
Yeah, I think the Grateful Dead is more than a band. They are sort of their own brand, they are a brand. There's a belief system behind the Grateful Dead that music should never be static. It should always evolve and grow. And it even has gone beyond the death of half the members of the band. And I'm 34 years old. I was 4 years old when Jerry Garcia died, but I'm a diehard fan of that music. I'm so grateful that I'll get to experience it hopefully forever, and think it continues to evolve. I appreciate how they're always evolving. They're not sort of egotistical and like grabbing onto this thing that they created. I think that's a lesson for founders and operators. If you want to have a successful business that, by definition has to go beyond you, then you need to have that approach. And I think they've done that very well. I also think just their visual brand universe that they've created is so tangible and compelling. And there's just a lot of storytelling, and they really empower people to like completely be present in the moment when the music is playing. And I think that's a little bit of what we're trying to do with our mental performance shot.
Love that answer. And Bruce isn't, like I said, in heaven.
Yes, I need more Magic Mind to focus because I'm so happy with that answer. So William, how can people get in touch with you, or what's the best way to learn more about Magic Mind? How could people reach out?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best way. I'm not as active posting, but I am on there and checking things out. I should probably do a little bit more of that like our friend Brooks does. Yeah, LinkedIn's good. Our website has a ton of information on the product. We have a full research tab. We did a FDA validated questionnaire survey using FDA certified questionnaires, surveying customers before, during, and after taking Magic Mind. Have a bunch of great data on the effects there and ingredient by ingredient studies. Quick shout out, like my favorite ingredient, Bacopa Monnieri, which is so bitter that most people can't put it in a beverage, but we figured out how to do it. It has been shown to decrease ADHD symptoms in children by 85% in one study that I can send you. We can't market that specifically, but that study does exist and it's amazing. It includes verbal learning and memory for people
awesome.
over 55 years old. So just a wealth of data on the website that I'd point people to.
And you probably still have room to add a few more subscribers to the 35,000.
Yeah, I think I got 2 more right here, hopefully.
Absolutely.
That's true.
100%.
All right, Tracy, bring it home, baby.
Absolutely. Audience, thank you so much for joining us today. William, you were awesome. This is some great insight and advice to small emerging brands. So thanks for joining us today. Enjoy this episode and continue to follow us on Spotify as well as Apple Podcast. And also on LinkedIn. We post every Tuesday. And also check out our website where you can check out all of our episodes. And that website is www.road2retail.com. Bruce, what a great episode. Our first one live here in Dallas. And William, you are our first one. So congratulations and thanks for joining us.
Good luck out there, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
The music never stopped.